Hey, Professor. I was able to deliver my sermon to our youth group, a group of about 70 junior hires and high schoolers. But in the presentation, I realized that there probably wasn't enough history, and I didn't demonstrate enough of my understanding of the book of Obadiah. So I wanted to take just a few minutes here and just kind of demonstrate my understanding and just give you kind of some more background of my understanding of the book. As far as the actual prophet Obadiah, there's really not a whole lot known about him other than his name. His name means servant of Yahweh, servant of God. The consensus is the book was written around the first half of the Babylonian exile. So they're kind of putting it around 586 BC is when the book was written. And in some of my research, the entire book of Obadiah kind of covers about a 4-month span of when the prophecies were spoken. Like I said, it is a prophetic book. It's a series of prophetic poems to the nation of Edom that expresses their destruction. Obadiah lets them know that God will destroy their nations because of their disobedience to God and their rivalry with his people and with their alliance with Babylon. When the prophetic words were spoken to Edom, the Israelites were in exile from their land, the Babylonian exile, and there had to have been just a lot of fear in the Israelites. They had to have understood that they were in exile because of their disobedience to God. But did that mean that God was done with them? That the Abrahamic covenant was over? That what he said to Isaac and Rebekah, that the older of the twins would serve the younger? Maybe that was all over because they'd messed up too much. And I just can imagine there was a lot of fear within the Israelites at that time when they were in Babylonian exile. And so I can imagine the words that Obadiah spoke just kind of confirmed that their God was in power, that their God was still ruling, that he still was standing behind his word, he was still keeping his promises. Just with the certainty that Obadiah spoke of their destruction and their utter annihilation, where you will not see them again. Until the end of the book, where he talks about all nations will be reconciled. And we now know that's through Jesus, how all the nations will be reconciled through God. So it struck me how comforting or how much this prophecy meant to God's people as they were in this really scary, tumultuous time in their life. So yeah, I just wanted to throw in a little bit more history there, just so I showed that I have a little bit more understanding of the book than I demonstrated in my message. Okay, cool. So you got it? Yeah. Okay. There are probably people sitting out here that go, there's a book of Obadiah in the Bible? And if that's you, do not feel bad, because when I read this book, I'm like, I don't think I've ever read the book of Obadiah before. It's a small book. It's hidden like right in between the minor prophets. So if we look at the end of the Old Testament, there's 12 books at the end of the Old Testament that are the minor prophets. Now, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are all the minor prophets. Now, they are called minor prophets not because they are minor people, not because they're young or they're insignificant or anything like that. It really just means that the scroll that their prophecies were written down on were shorter than the other prophets. So, there's your little history lesson. Now, a little commercial for that little video we watched at the beginning. If you ever get into reading the Bible and you're just like, I have no idea what this is talking about. If you go on YouTube and you type in the Bible Project, they have videos like that for pretty much, if not for every book of the Bible, where it really just breaks it down and makes it simple and concise. So I want to encourage you guys, use resources like that. Get into the Word. Read the Word. If you don't understand it, that's fine. What I'm learning is the Bible takes a lifetime to start to understand. So if you don't understand it, that's totally fine. There's lots I read that I completely have no idea what I'm reading. Use resources like this. Anyways, little sidebar. So I was reading through the minor prophets, the 12 books of the minor prophets, and I read Obadiah, and it was really like one of those Holy Spirit moments where God was like, man, there's some stuff in this book that I want you to share with the youth group. And I'm like, but it's Obadiah. I can't share Obadiah with the youth group. These guys they won't find this interesting at all. And as I read it more, it was the fact that there's two nations that came from the line of Yahweh, of God, that were battling each other. That really stood out to me. I really looked at that and was like, man, how much does that apply to my life and to our lives as believers? How we come to church, we sing all the songs, we believe in Jesus, and honestly, we try. But when somebody that is a believer does something against you, there's no forgiveness. You hurt me. I'm taking you down. So that is what really kind of drew me to this book, where I started to read it and I studied it, and I'm like, hey, Jeff, I think I should teach this. And he's like, go for it. And then I'm like, I really should just teach Jonah. It's a lot easier. There's a big whale or fish or something where he gets swallowed up and spit out, and it's a whole lot easier to kind of talk about that one. But God really convicted me for this. And so let's dive in to Obadiah a little bit. Who is Obadiah? Obadiah was a prophet. Now, a prophet is basically someone that speaks for God. Okay, so God will reveal stuff to them. They speak it. Now, in the Old Testament, there's prophets. There's several prophets. There's a lot of false prophets too in the Old Testament. There was a time where like you could make money off of being a prophet. The thing about being a prophet, if you claim to be a prophet and you get one thing wrong, you're in trouble. You'll never be listened to again. So all of these books that we're reading, the scrolls of all the prophets, were the prophets that some of the prophets that really God spoke to and that changed the direction of God's people. So we're gonna look at a little bit closer what that Bible Project video talked about with Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau, it's in Genesis 25 through 27. Super, You should read this. Jeff's talked about it in the past, and we've studied this portion of Scripture in the past, and it's super interesting. It's kind of actually a little bit funny. Now, Abraham, you remember Abraham? Father Abraham. Father Abraham, right? So why do you think they call him Father Abraham?
Because he was a dad.
Well, he was a dad. But he was also, God told him that the line of his people are going to come from Abraham. So they knew. He had a son named Isaac. You remember Abraham took his little baby up to a stone and God said, hey, we're going to sacrifice you? That was Isaac. Okay. Isaac married Rebekah. Rebekah had two twins. Well, that's how twins work, isn't it? Two of them. Jacob and Esau were born. Now, it says in verse 23, and the Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rival. One nation will be stronger than the other, stronger than your other, and your older son will serve the younger son. Now, there's significance to that. Your older son will serve the younger son. Because traditionally, back then, the older son had birthrights. Now, birthrights means you get a double portion. Now, a double portion means like you get twice as much as anybody after you of your father's inheritance. So you get the Ferrari and the Lotus, and they get the Chevy Impala, right? So you get twice as much. So birthright was a huge deal. Now, Esau and Jacob were twins, but Esau came out first, right? So Esau got the birthright. He got the nice car. He got all the stuff from Isaac, right? That's until he was out. Esau was out hunting. It said Esau was this giant, hairy dude. In fact, when they were born, Esau came out like a fur ball. In fact, Esau means hairy. He came out so hairy. Could you imagine? You have to hose him off when you're done or something like that. That's just, in fact, in verse 24, it says, when the time came to give birth, Rebekah discovered that she indeed have twins. The first was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. Lovely, red and hairy, right? And so they named him Esau. Then the other was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel, and they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. So he came out first. He was a big, hairy dude. And as he grew into this big, strong, he still was hairy, but he was a big, strong dude. And one day he was out hunting and came back into the house after hunting and was famished. You know that you didn't eat breakfast, you went through school, you had football, water polo, swim, whatever practice, you didn't get a chance to eat anything. You come home and mom doesn't have dinner ready and you have that I'm ready to gnaw off my arm hunger, right? Esau came home like that. Esau was like, oh, dude, I'm hungry. And we can only assume Jacob had a little bit of wisdom here and kind of knew that Esau was going to be hungry. And when Esau walked in, he saw that Jacob was making a pot of red lentil stew. And he said, hey, give me some of that. What do you think Jacob did? Right? Give him some, right? No. No. My boy Jacob went, all right, I'll give you a bowl of this red stew, but you have to give me your birthright. Right? I want the cars. Give me your birthright. And Esau's like, dude, if I starve to death, what's a birthright matter? Fine, take my birthright. Took a bowl of stew. The boy sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. Right? I guess that's a man's man if that's the way you want to look at it. That's brotherly love, right? Jacob wouldn't even give the guy a bowl of stew. And it says in 25 in chapter 25 of Genesis that when they were in the womb, when Esau and Jacob were in the womb, they fought even in the womb. Like, they fought all the time. But God also told them they're going to become two nations. And they did, just like that Bible Project video talked about. They became, Jacob was renamed Israel and Esau was renamed Edom. You all know something funny? You know what Edom meant in Hebrew? Red. Red, because he was born red. He had red stew. Like, there's a whole red theme in his life. How many guys before tonight had ever heard of the nation of Israel? Good chunk of you, right? How many of you had ever heard of the nation Edom? Quite a bit less, right? Obadiah tells us why we don't hear a lot about Edom. As we get into the book, we see... come on, baby. Sorry. There it is. You know what? So we look in the first couple verses. Now, the fun part about reading Obadiah is you don't have to say Obadiah chapter whatever, verse 3. There's only one chapter in Obadiah. So when we can just say Obadiah 1, Obadiah 2, Obadiah 3. It's for some reason makes me very happy. So chapter 1 or verse 1 says, this is the vision of the sovereign Lord revealed to Obadiah concerning the land of Edom. We have heard a message from the Lord that an ambassador was sent to the nations to say, get ready, everyone. Let every one of our armies attack Edom. So when you have a credible prophet come to your nation and say, we are gathering up forces to destroy you, that's not good news. That's not good. Now, Edom was like, we're good. We're good. We can handle you guys. Don't worry about it. Like, we've already beat Judah and Israel. We've got it handled. But why were they going to be destroyed? Hang on. Let me try to get caught up here. Okay, there we go. What caused Edom's downfall? Well, we see that in verse 3. In verse 3, it says, you've been deceived by your own pride because you live in rock fortresses and make your home in high mountains, who can never reach us. Who can ever reach us way up there, you ask boastfully. It was pride. Pride got Edom. Pride got Esau. Now, the interesting thing is that Jacob wasn't a stellar dude, right? Not only did he get his birthright, if you read later in chapter 25, there's a story of how Jacob stole their father's blessing from Esau. It involves his dad being blind and Jacob tying a piece of lamb's wool to his arm to make him believe that it was Esau that he was talking to because he was so hairy. Remember, he touched his arm. Anyways, you should read it sometime. It's pretty good. So Jacob wasn't all that great of a guy. And there's 2 points that I really, really like about the fact that Jacob wasn't really all that stellar. And I was talking to Jeff about this earlier today, and I've learned this in school too. When you're reading the Old Testament, it's all showing why we need a Messiah. It's leading us to why we need a Messiah. So as you read the Old Testament, you should be looking to see, as a believer in Jesus, how is this leading me to Jesus? How is this story directing his people and directing our lives towards Jesus? And next week, we're going to really dig into that, about how Obadiah is directly leading us to Jesus. The other thing is that we're not perfect people. And God chose to save his people, the land of Israel, right, the nation of Israel. He chose his people, even though they weren't perfect. And if you read the Old Testament, there's lots of mistakes that Israel makes. They've been exiled from every place they go. They do so many things against God. But in the case of Edom, he chose his people. He chose to save Israel, which is exciting to me. Like, God cares so much about his people that he chose Israel over Edom because he cared so much about us, about them. Esau and Edom's pride is because they thought they knew better than God. When they were born, when the nations were established, they both came from the line of Yahweh, the line of God. Esau decided he knew better than God. And that's why God made it clear that Israel were going to be his people. And so pride is what took him down. And if you look in verses 5 through 9 in Obadiah, it spells out how the destruction of Edom was because of Edom's direct path against Israel. They fought Israel when Babylon took over Israel, and they all went into the desert, into exile. Edom joined Babylon and helped Babylon destroy Israel and throw them into exile. And so God stood true to his promise. God stood true to his people. And pride came to a point that it destroyed an entire nation. 2 brothers fought in the womb, fought when they were born. As they grew older, they fought. Every account in the Bible is of them fighting because of pride. How is pride affecting your family? A lot of us here have brothers and sisters that we have varying relationships with, right? Some of us are like, I love my brother. I love my sister. They are the greatest people ever. Some of us are all, I would love my brother or my sister to not be in my house any longer. I cannot wait to move out just so I can get away from them. My aunts were like that. Growing up, my mom had two sisters that got into a fight. I was young, probably young. I don't even know. I don't even remember. They got into a fight. A lot of years to cover. Yeah, this is, I think, right after Wheels got round. But they got into a fight that lasted a little over 30 years. At least 30 years. Could have been a little longer. And you ask them both, what started? I asked them both. I asked both of them. And friend, what started this fight? Well, she said something, and I just, I can never be me, and okay. Aunt Jen, what started the fight? Oh, well, she said something, and I don't know, it was a long time ago, Tim. And I said, so you're comfortable with your relationship being destroyed or something you don't even remember what happened? I can't be around her. I can't live with her. You know what it took for them to finally be in the same room and to finally talk with each other? My mom dying. Harsh, right? The one person that was kind of the go-between between the two of them, that tried to keep the peace between my two aunts was my mom. And once she died, they realized, maybe we should be friends again. And that was a while ago. I think my mom died about 15 years ago. And just this past what just happened? Easter. I was talking to my aunt, and one of the first things she said was some sarcastic remark about my other aunts. And I'm like, oh, no, here we go again. Now, this didn't happen instantly. It wasn't like they got in one big fight and my mom got scared and said to move her. Sorry. They didn't just get in this one fight and then it was over. This was a build. This was a big build. If you talk deeper, like my Aunt Fran said my Aunt Jen got spoiled, and my Aunt Jen said, no, she never treated me nice. And this was a red stew incident over and over and over, which kept compiling and led to over 30 years of lost relationship, to which I don't believe the relationship's ever going to be a healthy relationship. So guys, the little fights that you're having with your brothers and your sisters or your mom or your aunts, or your uncle, or whoever it is in your family, your cousins. These little constant jabs of, you drive me insane. I don't want to be around you, and I'm going to make it known. Guys, they build. They build. Now, your fights with your siblings or your family more than likely will never destroy a nation, right? We can't see like America going down and, it's like, well, Kate was fighting with her brothers, and so it's the end of America. Not going to happen probably. But you know what it can do? It can destroy a family. My aunt that got in a fight, she has 4 kids, and the other one has 1. They never communicated with each other. They weren't mad at each other. They just didn't know each other. They knew each other when they were very young, but the rest of their lives they spent apart. because they were battling, because they let this build. Guys, these little arguments, these little jabs that you do towards one another, these feelings of like, I just hate my brother. I hate my sister. These are strong things that aren't that big of a deal at the beginning, but build and build and build. And these are the things that destroy relationships. These are the things that will bring your family down, just as it brought Edom down. Now, what is your role in your family? I feel like God has kind of made us all unique. We all have a special role. Like for me, in my family with my sister and my mom growing up, my role was kind of the peacemaker. My mom and my sister would, you ever hear that phrase, they can't live together, but they can't stay apart? That was my mom and my sister. And it got hot sometimes. Like, there was one time at like 3 a.m, it was full-on scream fest. Like, blah, 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 blah. And then my sister runs out the door, hops in her car, and bounces. Like, I'm out. And she was like 17. I'm like, protector Tim kicks in, right? And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Your sister, blah, 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 blah. I ran outside, Danny, what's happening? Mom is blah, blah. Okay, wait, what's happening? I failed on that one. She was gone. I didn't see her till the next day. And then it was like nothing happened. But that's my role. That was like my role. My sister's role in the family was to be cool and to get things done. Like, she's just kind of one of those people that just makes things happen. And she made the Longo name cool, right? I think I've told you guys before, all the way through junior high and high school, I was Danny Longo's brother. I was never Tim. Like, I got the, you're Danny Longo's brother kind of thing. Yeah, I am. I know. I don't look good. She does. Whatever. So God has gifted each and every one of us with a role. Some of us are the protectors. Some of us are we got to get stuff done. Some of us are the ones that are the ones that bring people in, like the friendly ones that people are just drawn to. And they always have friends, they always bring people in, and they're always that. There's times where like some of you are the ones that are encouragers. You're the ones that if you see somebody down, you see somebody that needs something, you're on it. And you let them know that you're there for them, and you will do whatever it takes to help them. We all have our roles. But does our pride get in the way of those roles sometimes? There were several times in my life where I wasn't comfortable being the peacemaker guy. I wanted to be the cool kid, like the good-looking guy that all the girls liked and all this stuff, and be as popular as my sister was and all this stuff. And I remember getting jealous with her. And we got along really well. We still get along really well. But there were times when I would just be mean to her because I was really kind of jealous and thought I had a better direction than she did. And I kind of thought, I can do this. I can be cool. I couldn't be cool. It didn't work. But I tell you what, when things were falling apart, she wasn't very good at keeping the peace. Is your pride affecting your relationships? Is your pride getting in the way of you doing what God has asked you and built you and made you and established you to be? In 1 John 4, 19, 20, it says, we love because he loved us first. We love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, for he has not seen. That's patented Longo reading for you right there, guys. Jesus gave us an example of how to love people. You might be saying, hey, I'm doing my best with my brother or my sister. I'm doing my best to keep our relationship as strong as we can, as strong as I can. Are you? Jesus gives us an example. Jesus lived a life of how to love each other. And if it says we hate our brother, we hate him. We can't live both sides of the fence. We're either with Jesus or we're not with Jesus. And I gotta be honest with you guys, some of you need to check your hearts. Some of you may need to talk to your brothers or your sisters or your cousins or whoever you're with. You may need to apologize. You may need to ask forgiveness and make efforts to change. Because, guys, treating your family and your loved ones cruel and mean and deceitful and prideful will lead to a fall. It's not always the fall of a nation, like with Jacob and Esau. But it can be the fall of your relationship with your family, and it could destroy your family. So as we head off to detour groups, in our detour groups, we're going to have a time to reflect on that, a time to reflect on how are you doing with the people God has placed in your life? How are you doing with loving your brothers, your sisters, your family as Jesus loved you? So I'd encourage you guys on the bottom of the roadmaps, there's an action point of get alone with God. Spend some time praying. Spend some time listening to God. Allow him to direct you. Allow him to convict you and make you uncomfortable of, I'm not treating this person very well. I'm acting kind of prideful right now. And man, he will direct you on how to clear up that relationship and how to build a strong relationship with that person.